Factory Planner is a new mod. It's still in development. So there are some things that are missing. There are, but it does do quite a bit of this work for you. Just like Active Craft Time, just like Kirk McDonald, and even our spreadsheet calculator. It kind of works about as advanced as our spreadsheet calculator does. So first of all, I want to look at preferences, which isn't mod settings. That's in the mod settings panel. But this is kind of the same preferences that we picked when we were looking at Kirk McDonald, as far as, okay, what kind of belt do you want to base your factory on? What kind of fuel do you want for burning machines? If you're beaconing, what kind of beacons, which the super beacons are part of creative mod, so we can kind of ignore those. And then if you're going to do some mining calculations, what kind of mining drill do you want to use? If you're going to do smelting calculations, what kind of smelter do you want to use? And if you're crafting, what kind of crafting machines do you want to use? And they actually, this is kind of an interesting thing. They break the recipes down. And I'm assuming this is a flag or some sort of a tag that's in the code itself that defines these machines in the game. But you can actually choose different machines depending on what the sort of the crafting tier is, if you wanted to. I would never personally do that. I like kind of everything being at the same machine level, so I make it all blue machines. So the first thing is, in Factory Planner, they call what we've been calling a production line, they call it a subfactory. So you can, one of the things that I do like is you can name this subfactory. So I want to have a subfactory that makes gears. I can choose the icon for it. And then I have a subfactory plan here that can make gears. Now, I can choose what time scale I want. But even if I choose the 1 minute time scale, I can switch the output here to be in belt counts, in items per second, or in items per minute. But I'm going to do a 1 second time scale just because I like working, as I mentioned earlier, I like working in the 1 second, in the items per second, kind of 1 second time scale in the early game. The factory has different floors, which is what I would call sort of like each kind of row of machines. Like earlier when we set up the gear assembly, that dual row rather of machines would be one floor. And then you can have subfloors. So like if you're doing like green science, you have your floor that is the green science, and we'll get to, I can actually show you that a bit more here. And then you might have a subfloor that is where you make your inserters and transport belts. And we'll actually show that as we get into making that recipe in here. You can add in an extensive note here, up to 50,000 characters, although that's probably going to inflate your game file quite a bit, of describing what this subfactory is doing, or anything you want to talk about with this subfactory, which is kind of a cool feature. And then you can force all the machines in the factory or in the floor to your preferred machines that you set in your preferences, which is kind of cool. So let's output gears. We click the products, we click the recipe we want, and we tell it how many we want to output. We'll do the 15 like we've been doing all along. And the icon is red. Nothing else happened, but the icon is red. So the tutorial mode of this mod tells you to, when you left click to add it to the production line here. So level 1 of our factory, or our subfactory rather, is gear making. We need 10 machines. We're producing 15 gears, which is 1 yellow belt, which we can flip to show, rather, no, that changes these numbers. 15 gears, and we're consuming 30 iron plates per second, which we can also show as belts, 2 yellow belts of input. So I mean, that's fairly simple, but that's the first recipe here, in fact, in the factory planner. It tells you need 10 machines, tells you you need 30 plates per second, which is 2 yellow belts, and you wanted it to produce 15. The summary up here shows you that you are making 30, that you need 30 plates per second here, and if we had more than one product, it would show. So if we do new subfactory, and we do green circuits, choose our icon. I'll do the 1 second time scale again. And I will pick green circuits. And by the way, the amount you type in here has to correspond to the time scale you chose here. So if you choose the 1 minute time scale, you don't want this to be 15, you want this to be 15 times 60. So that you're seeing what you would want to produce in 1 minute. So these buttons over here control what's down here, but this time scale needs to correspond to the product that you want. So again, we needed 10 machines making green circuits, but we also need to make copper cables. We already have the iron here, and you can see the ingredients are summarized up here. But if we click on this copper cable recipe, it automatically selects the appropriate recipe here. You can modify the recipe, or you can pick if there's multiple recipes that make the same item, say in a mod, or I suppose when we get to looking at oil, there's different ways to make the same fluid. So we'll get to that in a minute. But this tells us we need 15 assembly machines making copper cable, which makes sense because it's 3 to 2. And we need the amount of copper cable, which is the same. And it tells us we need 22.5 iron plates. So the summary up here in the ingredients factors out the copper cable because it's part of the factory and just tells us the input ingredients we need. So we're going to use, what is that, 3/4 or 2/3? Check my math. 3/4 of 2 belts, basically, of copper, and 1 belt of iron. Yeah, 1.5 belts of copper, 1 belt of iron. So that's green circuits in Factory Planner. We can do the same thing with red science. That recipe. Change our time scale. Pick our item. We'll do our 1.5. Again, it's 10 machines. And we need to make gears, so we'll click on the gear. And it picks the correct recipe, which is only 1, and it tells us how much iron we need input to make the number of gears we want, to make the number of science we want. So total input here is 1.5 copper per second and 3 plates per second, 3 iron plates per second. And again, you can switch this to belts, which doesn't make a whole lot of sense with this type of recipe. But with green circuits, it actually does, sort of, except that we're direct inserting the copper cable because it would be insane to have 3 yellow belts of copper cable. Do green science next. And I'm going kind of faster through these recipes because we've seen them now. This is the 4th time we're looking at these recipes, or at least the 3rd. So I don't want to spend a bunch of time kind of repeating everything slowly, but by all means, if you have questions, stop me. Peps is saying it's good for C block and every other mod where you need to look out for energy usage. Yeah, using a lower, yeah, that's true. That is very true. Having the preference on the lower tier machines is very good for when you're energy constrained because they use quite a bit less energy. And the same thing with the inserters, like when we were looking at, here, even for this amount of chemical science, which is twice the amount that I usually do leading up to the rocket, the first rocket launch, it's telling us to only use yellow inserters, not blue inserters. And I personally would oftentimes throw blue inserters down there. But if we look at the power usage for yellow inserters, They use 13 kilowatts. Blue inserters use 46. That's almost 4 times the energy, and for something like this, it's completely wasted. So if you're using a mod where you're power constrained, or you don't have that much coal on your map, so you want to be careful on the amount of power that you're consuming, so you don't burn through so much coal. It's good to have mods like this that show you, oh, hey, I should only be using yellow inserters here because I don't need to use 4 times the amount of power for the same effort. And then in Factory Planner, I want to lock as much as I can down to assembly machine 1 because I don't want it, because they use, let's look at that. Let's look at the difference there. These use 75 kilowatts, and these use 150. So for 50% increase in the amount of products produced, that is going from the crafting speed of 0.5 to the crafting speed of 0.75, you use 100% more energy. So if you're really constrained on the amount of power you have, then forcing a mod like Factory Planner down to the lowest level machine is going to save you quite a bit in electricity. All right, so green science. Green science, we need 12 machines, which is what we calculated previously. It needs 1.5 transport belts. Well, what if we wanted to make those in a sub-factory? So we click on the belt, and it takes us down to level 2. We need 1 machine here, and we need 1 machine here, making the products we need to produce the belts. Now we go up again, and we click on this, and we go into that sub-factory, or that subfloor, excuse me. We need 1 machine making the inserters, and we need 1 machine making the gears. Now, Factory Planner is rounding up, because if you recall, I think the belts actually only needed half a machine, but they're showing us 1. And unless that's in the mod settings, it's automatically rounding up into showing you the whole number. Okay, so the input here, so you can see the sub-factory, which is shown there's a sub-factory here because the icon is green. The sub-factory making transport belts needs 2.25 iron plates per second. This is how it's accomplishing it. The sub-factory making inserters needs 4.5 iron plates per second plus 1.5 green circuits. The sub-factory is showing us how we're accomplishing that. It's kind of a interesting way of accomplishing sort of a tiered system, so that you can say, okay, well, I want to know, I want my green science to be one component of my factory, and then I want these two to be separate components of my factory that are kind of built separately and have separate inputs, which is how you commonly build green science, by having, you know, a column of machines making green science, and then you might have off to the side a machine making belts and a machine making inserters, and then you might have a gear machine inserting into each of those. About that? Like that, and then you're actually just running a belt of these items on each side into your green science factory. So that kind of gives you that concept of, I want to isolate these items into their own factory, or their own component of this sub-factory, their own floor, if you will, so that they're handled separately. Oh, hey, Jaron. Welcome to the stream. Well, it's the middle of the day, so I was hoping that or middle of the day for me, which is the end of the day for you, but I was hoping that I would be able to catch a few Europeans on the stream. So it's a little bit more of an inconvenience perhaps for the Americans who are enjoying their Saturdays. You know, at least here where I am, it's pretty nice outside. But I did. So hey, I suspect there's a few Americans here in the stream that are being quiet today. Alrighty. So let's just keep making factories. We did gears, green circuits, red science, green science. Let's look at plastic. Plastic again kind of works the same way. We want we'll just say 15 plastic output. You're welcome. So we need 7.5, so it rounds up to 8. And then we need 7.5 coal coming in and 150 petroleum coming in. Now we get to the way that Factory Planner handles oil. If you wanted to make your oil using advanced oil processing, it's going to do what our spreadsheet calculator did at first. It's going to calculate the amount of crude you need, the amount of refineries you need, and it's going to count the heavy oil and the light oil as byproducts. And I haven't really been able to come up with a way to get it to not do this, to not calculate. Not what I wanted. Thank you. To get it to not calculate the to calculate the automated oil calculation like we were doing at Kirk McDonald, like we set our spreadsheet up to do in order to handle all the cracking. So I haven't been able to figure out how to get this mod to handle the cracking kind of automatically. Unless I'm missing something, and I very well could be. Yeah, you're right, Peps. It does show the half machines or the fractional machines on the hover. But I haven't been able to figure out how to get this mod to do the cracking and the net result. So this is kind of the same effect of, okay, we need to deal with the heavy oil and we need to deal with the light oil in some way. We could add... No, we can't even add in... Could potentially add in this... No, we can't even add in that. So, I'm hoping that with this mod being still fairly new, that they eventually bake in some way of handling the automatic... I tried that, and it doesn't do anything. All it does is let you left shift click to swap the positioning of the products. But it doesn't actually handle them. I can't figure out a way to make it handle them properly. I played with this mod for a little while in preparation for this tutorial, and it doesn't handle that yet. So just kind of keep that in mind. But I suspect that they will eventually get this mod to handle the automatic cracking just like Kirk McDonald does, and like the spreadsheet we built earlier does, and like the next mod that we're going to look at does. So with that, we're just gonna continue on to the next mod. Oh, you want me to? Yeah, we could do that. So if we just want to say oil, I'm not gonna bother with an icon. Even with that, I can't really seem to get it to do... like, say I wanted 150 petroleum gas. When I do, I have to pick the recipe and it still just handles it the same way. And I can't get it to put the cracking. I mean, I can say, well, let's put in the recipe for light oil cracking to petroleum gas, but it doesn't combine. It doesn't do the figuring on its own. And I'm not sure how to make it do it. So at this point, I would probably recommend to anyone to only use this mod for solid products, which, to be fair, is 75+% of the game, and kind of either use a different mod or calculate the oil needs yourself, or do what a lot of people do and just overproduce the oil products, and just use this mod for calculating the solid stuff, the belted stuff. Okay, so the next mod we want to look at is the one that you've probably seen. Oh, definitely. Well, and that's what it can be used for, because unless you're outposting oil, you can use that mod for all of that. So it's not a bad mod. It's just I think it's still fairly early in its development, and they still need to come up with a way to handle that cracking down, I guess is what I will call it.